In our quest for understanding the divine mysteries, there are some banned books that we rarely hear about. One of the most controversial books in biblical history is the Book of Judith. Although widely considered a work of praise for a woman's faith and resilience, the Book of Judith is not accepted into the official Bible of many religions, especially Judaism and many branches of Christianity. So why was this book banned? Does it contain messages that are too strong, or do they contradict mainstream religious doctrines? In this article, we will explore the reasons behind the banning of the Book of Judith, as well as the profound lessons this book can bring us, especially in better understanding how God leads and challenges people in difficult situations. Number 1. Light in the dark, God's promise amid despair. In a turbulent time when Israel was threatened by the terrible power of the Assyrian Empire, the story of loyalty and hope in God became a guiding light for His people. This was when the small kingdoms of the Near East faced brutal invasions and relentless pressure from surrounding powers, especially Assyria under King Nebuchadnezzar. It was a moment when Israel had to choose between giving up all hope or trusting in the redeeming hand of the Most High. Assyria, known for its unparalleled military power, was not only a great empire but also a symbol of destruction. They used brutal tactics and spread fear in every land they passed through. Under the leadership of Nebuchadnezzar, this empire became an overwhelming power with the ambition to conquer all the nations around them. For those who refused to submit were doomed to destruction. In his campaign, King Nebuchadnezzar trusted the general Holofernes, a man of extraordinary military talent and boundless cruelty. Holofernes was tasked with leading a vast, well-trained army to destroy all that stood in their way. Every time the Assyrian army advanced through a land, they left behind devastation and pain. The nations they attacked often had no choice but to surrender or face a tragic fate. With each advance of Holofernes and his army, fear spread to the borders of Israel. Israel had already suffered much from previous invasions, and now they faced a greater danger than ever. The neighboring lands were destroyed, and Israel was isolated, with nowhere to run. The people lived in constant anxiety, wondering whether their country could survive the storm. But within Israel, division and chaos only made matters worse. The leaders, called to lead the people in their time of need, gradually lost faith in God's ability to protect them. They argued over defense strategies, made poor decisions, and lacked a consensus on how to deal with the common threat. Meanwhile, doubts and disagreements within the Israelites grew, sapping their fighting spirit. During those dark days, despair was everywhere. Every Israeli family lived in fear. They worried about the future, not only for themselves but also for their children. The warriors who had once defended their homeland felt weak and powerless against the overwhelming might of the Assyrians. They wonder if God will still hear their prayers, if salvation will come before it is too late. In this crisis, Israel has two choices: surrender to the enemy and lose all identity, or put their trust in the God who has guided them through unimaginable hardships. The history of Israel has always been marked by miracles and miraculous interventions from God, but at this moment, that trust is being tested more than ever. Leaders and people are faced with a painful truth. They cannot win on their own, and only the intervention of the Almighty can change the situation. No matter how deep the darkness, hope is not entirely extinguished. In the most dangerous moments, God often shows His power. Israel's story is not only a reminder of the power of the enemy, but also an affirmation that in every adversity, God is always with His people. And Israel is called to remember God's promises in the face of seemingly inevitable collapse. He never abandons His people, even when they stray. Amidst the cries of the people, God says, "Return to me, and I will restore you." That promise is not only for ancient Israel, but also for all who feel hopeless and disoriented today. The story of the confrontation between Israel and Assyria is not only a history lesson, but also a profound reminder of the importance of trusting in God. Despite the adversity, His hand is always strong to rescue. Israel's challenge is not the strength of its enemies, but rather its lack of faith in God's power and protection. Today, as we face life's challenges, we can learn a lesson from Israel. Don't let fear cloud your vision of God. He is there, ready to act when we call upon Him. The enemy's power is never more significant than the power of the Almighty. Israel stood between life and death, between despair and hope, between surrender and victory. But God remains the same, the unshakable fortress we can rely on in every situation. And if Israel could overcome the darkness of Assyria, so can we, as long as we put our trust in God. Number 2, faith and mission, the story of Judith in God's plan. Judith, a prominent figure in the Bible, is an example of courage, unyielding faith, and timeless wisdom. Her story, told in the Deuterocanonical Book of Judith, takes place against a tense historical backdrop when the Assyrian army, under the command of General Holofernes, besieged the small town of Bethulia in the region of Judah. This is not simply a historical story, but also offers profound lessons about faith and God's miraculous providence. Judith was a widow living in Bethulia, described as beautiful but devout and wise. In an ancient Jewish society where widows were often considered vulnerable and had to rely on the support of the community, Judith overcame all prejudices. With her unwavering faith in God, she became a spiritual leader, a brilliant strategist, and a living symbol of hope amid despair. When the people of Bethulia faced the threat of destruction, the town elders seemed to have lost all faith in God's deliverance. They planned to surrender to the pressure of the Assyrians. Standing among the weak and desperate people, Judith appeared as a guiding light. She strongly rebuked the elders for their lack of faith, emphasizing that no one had the right to put a time limit on God's actions. She asserted that placing conditions on God was a sign of disrespect. Judith's determination stirred the spirits and faith of the villagers, making them realize that there was still hope if they put everything in God's hands. Judith did not just talk. She acted with courage and determination that few would dare to imagine. With a daring plan, she prepared herself, bathed and dressed in her best clothes, aiming to make a strong impression. She entered the Assyrian camp, facing Holofernes, the mighty general commanding the army besieging her town. This action in that era was not only reckless, but also wholly broke all traditional stereotypes about the role and position of women. Judith demonstrated her sharp intellect and extraordinary ability to improvise in the Assyrian camp. Instead of confronting him directly, she chose a more subtle path, convincing Holofernes that she had betrayed her people while providing him with false strategic information to gain his trust. Judith used her beauty and intelligence as sharp weapons, not to attack, but to subtly manipulate the situation. The story's climax is when Holofernes, drunk after a party, completely loses his guard. Judith takes advantage of that decisive moment to use his sword to cut off his head, ending the life of the formidable general. This act shows his daring and a strong belief that God is always on the side of those who trust in him. Holofernes' death shattered the morale of the Assyrian army. Chaos and fear spread and they retreated, leaving Bethulia victorious. This proves that sometimes not military strength or power determines victory, but faith and guidance from God are the key. Judith's story offers valuable lessons for every generation. First of all, she is a living symbol of faith. Through Judith, faith in God can help people overcome all limits, even seemingly insurmountable adversities. Judith's faith saved the people of Bethulia and became a source of inspiration for many generations about the power of courage when nurtured by faith. In addition, Judith also demonstrated the unique role of women in God's plan. In a world where women are often confined to traditional roles, Judith showed that they are not only supporters, but also powerful tools in God's hands to carry out His will. Judith's actions broke down all barriers and showed that courage, wisdom, and faith are not the privileges of any gender or status. Beyond the spiritual aspect, Judith's story also brings practical lessons about strategy and psychology. She utilized elements of psychological warfare, such as deception and timing her attacks. Holofernes' death was not only a military defeat, but also severely disrupted the morale of the Assyrian army, rendering them incapable of organizing a defense or attack. It shows that psychological and strategic factors can play a decisive role in any conflict, sometimes even more so than physical strength. Looking further, Judith is a reminder of God's providence and marvelous plan. He can use anyone, any situation, to accomplish His purposes. Judith, a small widow in a small town, became a hero to save her people. Through her, we learn that no one is too small or insignificant in God's eyes. He sees the worth of each person and can do extraordinary things through those willing to trust and obey Him. Judith's story is not only a story of victory, but also a lesson in faith, sacrifice, and the role of each individual in God's grand plan. She reminds us that when everything seems hopeless, when everyone around us has given up, one person with strong faith can still make a difference. That is the power of faith in God. Number 3, Judith, the mark of faith and courage. Judith, a widow living in Bethulia, has been etched in history as a symbol of absolute trust in God and extraordinary courage. When Israel was threatened by the Assyrian army, Judith stood up, carrying a heart whole of faith and a bold plan to save her people. Step by step, Judith prepared not only mentally, but also physically. Knowing that to confront Holofernes, the fearsome general of Assyria, she needed more than wisdom. She began by praying, completely surrendering herself to God. Judith's prayer was not only a supplication, but also a source of strength, believing that God would guide and protect her. With this deep faith, Judith was ready to face danger, even though she knew the road ahead could lead to death. In addition to mental preparation, Judith was also aware of the power of appearance. She put on makeup and chose gorgeous outfits to highlight her seductive beauty. Not out of vanity, she understood that the power of charm, when used wisely, can catch the enemy off guard. With sophistication and sensitivity, Judith turned those seemingly small elements into sharp weapons. Judith came to the Assyrian camp with the appearance of a weak woman, seeking surrender. In front of Holofernes, she presented herself as someone willing to provide strategic information about Israel. Her skillful words and softness in expression won over the general, making him believe entirely in her false loyalty. During her camp, Judith patiently observed and learned Holofernes' habits. She did not rush to act, but waited for the perfect moment. This patience not only demonstrated her wisdom, but also reflected her firm belief that God was guiding her. The opportunity came at a private party where Judith was invited to attend with Holofernes. With great skill, she got Holofernes drunk to the point of losing his guard. When he fell asleep in a state of unconsciousness, Judith acted decisively. She used his sword to cut off the general's head, ending Assyria's power and threat to Israel. Holding Holofernes' head, Judith returned to Bethulia. Her actions caused panic in the Assyrian army and brought about the nation's liberation. The enemy's downfall came not only from the death of a general, but also from the indomitable spirit and extraordinary wisdom of a small widow. Judith's actions are a profound lesson in the power of faith. Her courage was not based on physical strength or power, but on wisdom and trust in God. Through Judith's story, we see that even the most seemingly weak individuals can become mighty instruments in God's hands, as long as they are willing to listen and follow His will. This story reminds us that faith can carry us through significant challenges. When faced with hopeless situations, remember that, like Judith, we can find strength in prayer and faith in God. No matter how dangerous the path ahead is, God will always guide those who put their trust in Him. Judith not only saved the nation of Israel, but also left a spiritual legacy. Her actions are a reminder that strength lies not in weapons or power, but in the faith and courage to follow God's plan, no matter how difficult it may be. God always works through people willing to respond to Him, and Judith is a powerful testament to this truth. In the light of faith and sacrifice, Judith's story inspires us with the profound meaning of trusting in God's plan. Her bold actions show that even in the darkest of circumstances, God's light can still lead the way, bringing victory beyond what humans can imagine. Number 4, the power of faith, the story of Judith and the deliverance of Bethulia. In the darkest hour, when Bethulia, a small but strategic city, was besieged by the mighty army of Assyria, the Israelites faced profound despair. Long days of running out of drinking water, sleepless nights of hunger and thirst, and fear overwhelmed the hearts of every person. Judith, an unlikely widow with extraordinary faith and courage, appeared into this context. Judith was not a warrior. She was a woman with a heart whole of trust in God, sharp intelligence, and elegant beauty. But in the hands of God, she became an instrument to bring a miraculous victory to the Israelites. When everyone around her had almost given up hope, Judith decided to act. It was not just the action of an individual, but also a living expression of faith, placed in the right place at the right time. In a daring move, Judith voluntarily left Bethulia, pretending to surrender to Holofernes, the powerful commander of the Assyrian army. This was not a reckless act, but a delicate move, where she used her apparent weakness to turn the tables. Judith approached Holofernes with beauty and charm, but her wisdom and composure set her apart. Judith took action during the banquet when Holofernes was drunk and careless. With his sword, she cut off the head of the Assyrian commander. It was a decisive act, not only physical but also a powerful blow to the enemy's spirit. Judith did not just kill a man, she removed the symbol of power and oppression that had enveloped the Israelites. Returning to Bethulia, Judith brought an astonishing trophy, Holofernes' head. The people, who had been in despair, were now awakened by a renewed sense of faith and hope. Judith not only showed them the power of a wise plan, but also reminded them of God's living presence in seemingly hopeless situations. Under Judith's leadership, the Israelites mounted a counterattack. They took advantage of the disarray in the Assyrian ranks to launch a decisive attack. The Assyrians, leaderless, quickly collapsed before a small but determined people. The battle ended not only with the repulsing of the invaders, it was also a powerful affirmation of God's power to intervene in human history. The victory was not only military but also profoundly spiritual. From a humble widow, Judith became a symbol of faith, courage, and willingness to step out of one's comfort zone for the greater good. Her story is not a story of chance, but a testament to how God uses ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary plans. Judith's actions were also profoundly strategic. She struck at the Assyrians' weakest point, their morale and leadership. Holofernes' death not only disoriented the Assyrians, it also instilled widespread fear and confusion. Meanwhile, the Israelites were energized, turning their defeat into a powerful counterattack. But above all, Judith's story is a poignant reminder of the importance of faith. In the darkest moments, when all seems lost, God is always there, ready to intervene through those who trust Him. Judith not only rescued Bethulia, but also reminded the Israelites that they were not fighting alone. Behind every human plan and action is God's invisible but powerful hand. Judith's life after that victory was never the same. Her people revered her for her courageous actions and teaching them how to see God's presence in the most dangerous situations. Judith became a symbol of how weakness can become strength when placed in the hands of the Almighty. The story of Judith and the victory of Bethulia is not only a part of Israel's history, it is also a vivid lesson for every generation, reminding us that faith and courage open the way to salvation in difficult times. God always uses ordinary people to do great things, and Judith is a remarkable testament to that truth. Number 5. Judith. Judith's story resonates throughout history as a powerful reminder of faith, courage, and God's guidance in the darkest times. Judith, a simple woman of the Hebrew people, possessed neither military strength nor political power or status. Yet she became a powerful instrument of God to rescue her people from unimaginable danger. Her journey illustrates that complete trust in God is the source of all victory. Judith did not rely on her fighting skills or physical strength. Instead, she placed her absolute trust in God, knowing that everything came from Him. This affirms that true victory lies not in personal ability, but in confidence in the Almighty. Judith entered the battle not with weapons, but with faith. This made the difference, transforming her from an ordinary woman into a hero in the eyes of her people. Judith's actions also raise profound questions about the role of women in the Bible and in God's plan. In an age where women were often overlooked, Judith demonstrated that God can use anyone to accomplish His divine purposes, regardless of gender or status. Through her wisdom, courage, and obedience, she broke down social barriers to become a model of faith and devotion. Judith is a living testament that God is not only looking for physically strong people, but for hearts strong in faith. More than just a religious symbol, Judith's actions had profound strategic significance. In battle, she did not need military strength, but relied on sophisticated tactics and the element of surprise. When she entered the enemy camp, Judith knew Holofernes' complacency and arrogance would become his fatal weakness. With faith as her guide, she took advantage of the situation, turning the enemy's carelessness into an opportunity to fulfill God's mission. When Judith killed Holofernes, she not only saved her people, but also caused panic among the enemy. Her psychological tactics weakened the enemy's morale, allowing the Jews to win without a confrontation. This emphasizes that true strength lies not only in weapons, but also in wisdom and the ability to read the situation. Judith teaches us that sensitivity and faith can bring extraordinary results when faced with significant challenges. After her victory, Judith did not seek honor or power. Instead, she lived a simple life, dedicating everything to God. This is a profound lesson in humility and gratitude. Judith's success did not make her arrogant, but instead made her more attached to the one who guided her. Through her life, we see that faith is not just a tool to overcome challenges, but the foundation for living a life entire of meaning and purpose. Judith's journey is not only in history, but also through art, literature, and culture. From the paintings of Caravaggio to the works of Klimt, the image of Judith has become a source of inspiration for many generations. She is portrayed as a symbol of strength, wisdom, and faith. Through these works, Judith's story continues to live on, reminding us of the power of faith in the most challenging circumstances. Through our exploration of the folklore of Judith, we see her vast power. Judith's story also profoundly influences the history and beliefs of the people of Israel. She appears as a beacon of hope, shining amid dark times. In a time when the people of Israel were oppressed and threatened, Judith symbolized the spiritual strength and courage of a small but resilient people. She was a source of encouragement to those who felt weak and powerless, reminding them that all things are possible with God. Judith was not only a hero, but also a spiritual leader. She showed that leadership does not necessarily come from political or military power. Instead, it comes from wisdom, courage, and unwavering faith. Judith led her people not only through her actions, but also through her example of loyalty to God and her lifelong devotion to Him. Judith's story teaches us many valuable lessons. Faith in God can make the impossible possible. Wisdom and discernment can overcome physical strength. And ultimately, humility and devotion will lead us to a life of fulfillment and meaning. Judith reminds us that even in the most challenging circumstances, God is always with us and works through those who dare to trust and surrender completely to Him. Judith's story is not just a historical story, but also a call. It is a call to live by faith, act courageously, and dedicate our lives to glorifying God. Judith's journey inspires us all, reminding us that nothing can stop us when we stand firm in God. Number 6. The Women's War. Why Judith's story was forgotten. Why was this powerful and inspiring story omitted from many Bible versions? Was it because it was too bold, too controversial, or because of the prominence of a woman? To better understand why this story was omitted, we need to delve into the historical, cultural, and theological factors that influence the compilation and selection of the books in the Bible. The choice of which stories to include and which to exclude was not a random one, but a deliberate and multifaceted process. However, God provided several factors in the Bible that helped people find trust and grace during painful times. The history and culture of the early centuries formed the framework within which the books of the Bible were to be written. As religious communities and leaders compiled and selected these books, they faced difficult decisions, and Judith's story, with its tense situations and dramatic details, conflict, which certainly created a lot of controversy in those decisions. One reason may be the influence of political and religious forces. In the early days of Christianity and Judaism, biblical stories may have been seen as tools to maintain social and spiritual order. Stories that did not conform to stability or could create conflicts were discarded. Strong female characters, like Judith, often caused concern for those in religious power. And when the Emperor Theodora II saw some birth canals he had decorated with gold, imperial reverend written the occult, ancient societies often associated women's roles with domestic work and worship. Women were expected to be support, mothers, wives, or holy in their service to God. However, Judith's story, with its strong and decisive actions, went against these patterns. Judith was not only a woman who saved her people, but also a proactive, strong character who stood up for what she believed in. And it was this independence that may have made her story difficult to accept in the social and religious context of her time. In addition to historical and cultural factors, another important factor that caused this story to be removed from some versions of the Bible, its boldness and controversy. Judith was a strong character, but her actions were fierce and violent. The story of Judith killing Holofernes, an enemy general, with a powerful blow, certainly caused much debate. For the compilers of the Bible, they may have felt that this story was inconsistent with the message of love and peace that the Bible usually conveys. It can be said that in the eyes of some religious communities, the image of Judith may have overshadowed the model of women in the Bible. Women in the Bible are often seen as humble, patient, submissive, and standing behind prominent male figures. Judith is a woman who takes the initiative and can act independently in a dangerous situation. This strength makes her story strange and somewhat unacceptable to those who want to uphold the image of gentle, worshipful, and obedient women. However, Judith's story also has a profound meaning about the importance of women in the Bible. She is a model of courage and determination. In a society where women often had limited power and voice, Judith fought for the survival of her people, for justice and fairness. Her story shows that, in critical moments, women can stand up, make great changes, and make a significant difference. Since Judith's story was removed from some versions of the Bible, it may not have received its full appreciation. However, Judith's story offers a powerful message of courage and inner strength when viewed differently. This story is not only the story of a courageous woman, but also a testament to the fact that anyone, woman or man, can change the world with faith and determination. In fact, Judith's story carries a message that is relevant to what we need in today's modern world. It teaches us that nothing is impossible for those who stand up for their ideals and goals. In the most challenging circumstances, we can find the strength and determination to change our destiny and the destiny of others. Judith, with her decisive and courageous actions, is a model of courage, determination, and loyalty to a noble cause. So why was this story eliminated? Perhaps it does not fit the old stereotypes of women's roles in society and religion. However, if we look at it from another perspective, Judith is a model of a strong woman who can stand up and fight to protect important values. Her story is not only a lesson in courage, but also a reminder that sometimes it is those who are overlooked and considered weak who can change the world. The Book of Judith is a unique work in the Bible, but it is also one of the books banned in some religious traditions. The reason for this ban is not only because of the controversy over its origin and authenticity, but also because of the powerful message it carries. This work tells the story of a heroine, Judith, who dares to stand up against the invading enemy, showing a strong belief in God's protection and justice in all things.